Hello and welcome to another edition of the Aristi podcast. I'm Michael Parmar, Sales Director here at Aristi, and I'm delighted to have with us one of our special guests today, Vinay Parmar.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Vinay is a customer experience expert. So, it's going to be a really interesting conversation, I think, today to sort of see how cybersecurity and the customer experience go hand in hand and how that can really be a supporting mechanism for a customer to improve their cybersecurity and ultimately then not only improve their customers' experience, but also their experience with Aristi themselves. So, you can't build loyalty today without showing people their data. So, what does that mean, Vinay?
Well, it means that we've got to keep people's data safe, hasn't it? Right. That's the real key thing here. All joking aside, we're doing a trade a lot of the time for customer information. Customers more and more want personalization. They don't want to feel they're just getting general messages. They want to feel that things are curated to them a lot more. And in order to do that, you need customer data. And as we'll have seen in the press over the last kind of 18 months at least, there's been quite a few high-profile issues with companies that have had data stolen, customer data compromised, have had their operations disrupted. JLR, M&S, a number of different brands. So it's a big thing that we've got to really consider in when we're designing customer experiences and delivering them, and how we're both doing that internally from how we put our systems together, and also externally for how customers interact with us.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about securing people's data, it isn't just about technical and about encryption and pen testing and all that type of stuff. It's about understanding that there's humans behind that, and it's human error that can often lead to sort of cybersecurity breaches. So that's really important for the customer experience.
Yeah. I mean, the saying is you're only as good as your weakest link, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of the time, the weakest link is a human in the system. Whether that is somebody not following a policy or a procedure, clicking on an email they shouldn't have clicked on, not understanding certain protocol in that kind of way, whether that is somebody who's, with the right intent, put together a system. Maybe somebody's a startup, a software developer that's bootstrapped their company, has created this great product with coding stuff, but they've got a really poor maybe password protocol or something that's allowed a backdoor for somebody to get in. Whatever those things might be, normally when you can trace it back, it's down to human error. So having really clear policies, having really clear frameworks, and established ways of working to ensure that those are minimised is really important in the experience design.
Absolutely, and it's about empowering people as well, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
making security this, oh, scary word. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's about making sure people are informed enough
Yeah.
and bringing them along that journey.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when people talk about it, it can be quite intimidating to
Yeah,
talk about IT security or cyber security or those things. And I think just like your house, you can put as many cameras on you want, you can put all the alarms on that you want, but if somebody's going to get in, they're going to get in. But if it's about the steps you've taken to have that balance between feeling safe and secure enough and doing enough to ensure that you are as protected as you can be, but you can't legislate for every eventuality. There's going to be somebody who's going to find a way in somehow, some way. But it's about understanding that might happen and staying ahead of that as much as you can, I guess, in your design and approach. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we don't really think about in customer experience.
sure.
I'm here as a CX voice on a cybersecurity podcast, and you wouldn't necessarily put those things together, but cybersecurity is such a big part of what it is. If you think about the way that we consume most of services these days, we have a phone in our hand most of the time, and we're on an app, and we're booking trains, or we're buying groceries, or we're doing car insurance, whatever it may be. All of those interactions at any one point in time is interacting with another system.
Yeah.
And that crossover of me to you to me, sound like the Chuckle Brothers there, me to you that interaction has got to be secure, because that's where the vulnerability is, about where you're passing information through one another. But customers won't always think about that. But what we will think about is the consequences when it goes wrong, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess we work from a place of we expect the organisation to have done everything that they can do to make it safe.
Yeah. And that's the key thing here, isn't it? With any sort of data breach or, sort of cyber incident, trust can disappear overnight, can't it? And that's a real challenge to rebuild that trust and faith in that sort of chain that you were mentioning.
Yeah, and trust is the key word. You know, when people talk about customer experience, they describe it in many different ways. You know, it's funny because when you talk to people about what sales is, most people will be able to describe to you what sales is. Most people could probably describe to you what marketing is, or even IT to some degree. But if you ask people what customer experience is, you're probably going to get about 5 or 6 different answers, because it's so multifaceted, but also it's so misunderstood. People talk about it as contact centers or customer service or those kind of things, but it's really about every single touch point across the customer journey, of course, and as we've already discussed, those interactions you have with systems. And the fundamental thing around it is it's all based on trust. As humans, we will build relationships with people we trust. We'll do business with places that we trust. If trust is absent, then we're not going to interact. So that's the fundamental. And so, you know, if you don't have that as a baseline, if customers don't trust you, then you're in trouble. And I was sharing earlier on in the when we were doing some of the research and the build up for this show, that there's a really simple equation that I use in my work around trust. And it's called the trust equation. It's not mine. It was invented by somebody else. Okay. But it talks about trust is equal to credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation. And the way I explain that is, credibility is, do I believe you can do what you say you can do? So what the accreditations, certifications, the logos you have from your clients, that's your credibility. That's you saying you can do it. Reliability is, can you actually do what you say you can do, and how consistently can you do that?
Yeah.
You know, can I trust you to be able to do that, and can you do that? And those two are probably where most companies will really focus. Believability, you know, trust us, we can do this, and yes, we'll deliver for you. And there's you know, real merit in focusing on those two. The third one, intimacy, is how well do you know me? Do you see me? Do you understand me? Do I get the sense that you understand me? And that's probably one of the areas that's not focused on enough. Yeah. Companies talk about understanding customers and customer data and all those things, and that's really what that's for. Is how do you demonstrate to the customer that you really understand them, and what we talked about, personalization, being able to communicate with them, having the information there. You know, when you contact a company, you know, how many times does it feel like to you might as well have just been a new customer because they know nothing about you, sure, versus when you speak to really great ones that seem to have a bit of a history, and they know that you've called for the second time, or you visited for the 5th time, or they recognize you from your previous transactions, like there's something there. And then that sits over self-orientation. And self-orientation is the degree to which I'm on my own agenda. So am I in this for myself? Yeah. Or am I actually in this for both of us? Like how that, and the more self-oriented you are, and the more you're in it for yourself and your own personal gain, that undermines trust. So when you put those things together, that's what creates trust in organizations.
That's really interesting, and as you were describing that model, I was kind of applying it to Aristi in my head. Yeah. So the reliability is sort of the pen tests. It's that doing that project, making sure they're secure. The credibility obviously comes through our accreditations and certifications, experience, all that type of stuff. But the intimacy one is one that I think we do really well as a company, in that we build partnership models with our customers. It's not just one project and then, you know, we'll see you later type thing. It's about developing cybersecurity maturity along the way. It's about, if one of my customers or one of my team in sales, if they have a problem, they should be able to ring me up and say, Mike, look, I've got a real situation here. Could you please support me? And then I will know their organisation and know how to help them for not only their industry, but their context. And then, I guess that
self-orientation.
Self-orientation underneath is that making sure we're not too top-loaded on all of that, I guess.
It comes down to, you know, am I in this because by doing this, it's going to mean extra revenue for me? Yeah. It's going to mean a result for me. I'm going to get my bonus or whatever. Or am I actually here genuinely interested in, I'm solving a problem for you? And just as much in B2C customer experience, often our memories of brands that we really trust are rooted in high stress situations. It's funny, I often start workshops and seminars where I talk about, and I ask the audience, you know, give me your best customer experience. And most of the time, in fact, 9 times out of 10, they will start with a situation where something's gone wrong, and where the company's put it right.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be surprising, because it's often in those situations that we're in a high intense emotion. Something's going wrong, there's stress, there's anxiety. And when somebody solves a problem, when you're in that emotional state, that memory tends to stick. It's part of our psychology. It's how our brains work. In our brains, I think there's a place called the amygdala. I probably said that wrong. And within there, there's a part of the brain that stores your memories called the hippocampus, and that is where the more stressed, the more emotionally intense you're feeling, the more that memory locks in. And so in the same way as if you've got a client who's got a cybersecurity incident, you imagine the stress around revenue impact, customer impact, employee impact, all of this is going wrong. When they can pick up the phone to you and say, Michael, I've got a problem. Can you help me fix it? And you go, yeah, leave it with us. And you actually deliver on that. That locks in that level of experience, that memory, and that eventually equates to loyalty, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's really where customer experience is formed. It's the memories that we create from those interactions that we have.
For sure. And it's there's two key things there, I think. It's prevention is better than cure.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely, and that hopefully comes through in our services of offensive security.
Yeah.
But also, a key point you mentioned there, Vinay, it's delivering on what you're saying you're going to do.
Yeah.
Any salesperson, any person involved in that customer experience chain, which is anyone,
Yeah.
to be fair,
Yeah.
can say they're going to do something, but it's actually following up and delivering on that. That's the key loyalty builder, isn't it?
And you guys are in a position where you're not in the organisation, you're a partner, right?
Yeah.
And for businesses, when they're designing their customer experience or thinking about it, lots of the parts they control themselves. It's their teams, it's their people, but they then need to rely on third parties to do what they do really well as well, because it's part of the equation. They're not always in control. And so that consistency and that ability to feel like they can trust you, they can rely on you, that you'll deliver time and time again, is important to that whole equation, because they don't necessarily control that part of the jigsaw, so to speak. That's you. And if you don't show up and deliver to your best of your ability and do the things that you can do, then the jigsaw doesn't fit.
Absolutely. It's the customer wants to feel, thankfully these guys are here now, and everything's going to be calm and everything's going to be sorted.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing that we try and get with our sort of customer experience with our clients.
Yeah.
And well, to the point, we recently had an engagement, a red team engagement, where not only was the customer satisfied with the outcomes, all the type of reporting, things like that, but then their customers were saying, oh, who tested you? What did they do?
Yeah.
And then it's sort of building that chain. So sort of how important is cybersecurity as a whole for customers and for their sort of trust in you?
I think cybersecurity is almost a bit like air. We expect it to be there to be able to breathe. We might not always be thankful that it's there, but it's there. And so it is important. And as we said earlier on, it's not that customers don't think it's important and don't recognise it. But when it goes wrong, the impact is huge, either for the individual customer, or as you say, your customer of your customer, you're an extension of that customer's brand. When something goes wrong for their customers, you're just as associated with that as they are, right? And so, often in B2B, particularly when people are selling services into organisations, they forget that they're part of that customer's brand as well. Yeah. It's not just we're company Y, we've sold you product Y, and there you go, we're just a partner. Actually, product Y enables you to do what you do for your customers. We're part of that journey, and that partnership approach is fundamental. And you've got to have strong relationships. Otherwise, it's just a sales transaction that's a set of numbers and a contract, and that's what it will be. But yeah, it's massively important, Michael. I mean, I don't think customers will do business with companies that they can't trust.
For sure.
They need to know, if I'm putting my email into this box, if I'm giving up my password, if I'm doing these things, that's going to be taken care of, and I'm not going to find my information sold on the dark web somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always had a mantra that people buy from people.
Yeah.
It's, the company behind you has all of the core values and all of the really important things, but it's ultimately that person interacting with another person, because that's where the real trust connection is.
Yeah, it is. I think Emotion. I think it's emotion buys from emotion. Like, how you feel about the other person. That plays a key part in the decision making, backed up by the systems, the credibility, all of those things that you have. But it comes down to delivery.
Sure.
If you cannot deliver for that customer, if you can't do the things that you say you can do, you're falling at the first hurdle. So, and that's where, as we said earlier on, trust really develops. If you have strong credibility, strong reliability, but then you are customer focused in as much as you understand your customers' pain points, you see them. The way you communicate with customer A is different to the way that you communicate with customer Y. You've learnt their preferences. We were talking earlier on, I come from a financial services background. I started my career way back in the 90s working for a bank called egg.com, which was part Prudential. And in those early days, I spent a lot of time with the direct sales force that we had at Prudential, because you had the insurance man that would go knocking door to door collecting money off people. Sure. and for their endowment policies or whatever they had, and spending time with those guys, you really learn about the value of building relationships. They all knew every single one of their clients, their wife's name, their kids' names, their birthdays, anniversaries, special occasions. They pride themselves on knowing who all those customers were, and they built those relationships over time. Yeah. And so when they dealt with the parents and they built a good relationship, when the kids grew up and it was time for them to do something, naturally the kids would stick with them as well. So they had this continual customer chain. And I think those principles are no different to what we have in today's world. Yes, the tools might be different. Yes, we might be using technology. We might be using remote systems and may not be there in person. But it's still the same thing. We're collecting data and information intelligence on our customers. But in order for the organisation to use it, it's got to be stored in a really secure way that I trust that if I'm giving you this, because you're not sat in there in my living room with me,
yeah.
I can't see the whites of your eyes. So it's important that if I'm doing that via a system or a web page or something, I know that it's going to be safe for me to do that.
Absolutely, and that's a sort of a key thing that you've touched on there, how we've changed into this sort of more disconnected world, online, Teams, Zoom, all that type of stuff. And sometimes for a customer that works really well. They are happy with that model. Then other times it's that face-to-face. They're looking for that sort of more intimate interaction even. And I guess it all leads to, like you just said, Vinay, earlier, about customer A will have different wants and needs to customer Y, and all those letters in between. So it's about making sure as a salesperson, or indeed anyone in delivery or anyone in the organisation, knows what that customer is looking for, and then accommodates them as best as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what personalisation is all about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we've touched a lot on sort of the external, our organisation speaking to customers, but often the customer experience is internal, and it really starts with internally. How do sales, security, and the customer experience internally all work with each other?
Well, they have to. It's a team, right?
Yeah.
I was watching, I don't know if you've ever seen, if you've never watched it, there's a great documentary on Netflix about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls called The Last Dance, right? If you've never watched it, you should watch it. And in there, there's a clip, I think it's in episode 4, where there's a coach called Tex Winter on their coaching staff at the Chicago Bulls. And he has this idea of triangles. Because up until then, the Bulls were playing everything through Jordan. Give the ball to Jordan, he'll do his stuff. And Tex had much more of a team mentality.
Right.
And he said, actually, this is about moving the ball, and it's in this triangle. And so I think you've got sales and marketing, which is one part of the triangle. That's your attraction, getting people in, getting through the door. Yep. Then you've got operations and delivery, which is the third part of the triangle. So you and commercial and all those kind of things, they sit kind of there. And then you've got your kind of service execution piece, which is the experience. And in very much they've got to work in tandem with each other. There's no point having really great sales and marketing and bringing people through the door if the delivery is poor, because you'll end up giving away money through refunds and discounts, and you'll lose customers and they won't come back. But if the first two parts of that pointed triangle, the attraction's good, so you get them through the door, you deliver really good service, and they have a great experience in terms of delivery, the likelihood of them coming back is going to be high, because the experience overall is a memorable one for the right reason. So they have to work in tandem. And so whilst the experience is felt on the outside by the customer, how those teams work internally with each other is really important. I've been on both sides of the table, both as a consultant and in executive posts as well in organisations. And often, some of the worst things that happen, you have a pre-sales team come in, and then you have a sales team, and then they hand over to somebody who does delivery. And so often you see it fall down. The baton pass is not good.
Yeah.
From that team to that team to that team. The conversation you had up here in pre-sales isn't reflected in the actual implementation piece here. Suddenly it's as if you're dealing with a different company. It can feel like that way.
Yeah.
So the more that they work in tandem together and have that baton pass and move and understand that they are a connected part of that triangle, the greater the experience outcome will be for customers.
Yeah, and that's a key thing for me at Aristi with so we have dedicated account managers assigned a customer, and they live with that customer for the life cycle, not only of that customer, but then if they move to another organisation.
Yeah.
The key thing about that for me is that account manager knows all of their pain points, knows everything that's gone along the way, knows how the pre-sales went, knows how the sort of delivery went, and it's always that single point of contact for that customer to give them reassurance that they know they can pick up the phone or email or whatever and get that experience.
Yeah, and you can only really get there by being genuinely interested in the other person, the other party.
Yeah.
You have to come from a place of service. I know this might sound a bit philosophical, or spiritual even, but it is about the other person. Your intent is, how am I here to serve and understand what's going on over there? And then once I understand what's going on over there, how do I best help fill those gaps? You can only do that by being oriented, which is that self-orientation piece, towards others, not yourself. Because if you're sitting there with your features and benefits brochure about all the things you do, you can rattle those off. But if you don't understand how they fit, then you're not going to get very far.
Absolutely. And I guess with that self-orientation as well is accountability. It's if you make a mistake, you hold your hands up and say, look, at first opportunity, I made a mistake, this is how I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think that really empowers not only the salespeople, but the customer as well.
Yeah, ownership is massive. In those times, particularly of stress, of disruption, when things go wrong, your customers want to know that you're taking care of them. So they want to know someone's got it, someone's owning it. What they don't want is to be passed from pillar to post.
Yeah.
What's happening with this? They don't want to be left in the dark. Even if you're communicating, we don't have an update yet, but here's where we've got to so far. That regular beat of information. Because the thing is, if you're not doing it, somebody else is.
Sure.
Social media is this thing where people just start sending things. Oh, did you hear it's to do with this, or did you hear it's to do with that? And before you know it, news spreads like wildfire, right? So, it used to be that you could get your PR team and your communications team up in ahead of it, control the narrative, and control the comms. You can't do that anymore in today's world.
Yeah.
There are too many people with voices, influence, who are able to quickly get information out there. You've only got to look at the sports industry. I don't know if you guys follow football or not, but transfers happen on social media days before the actual transfers happen because people have got inside info, and it's the same thing. So, but back to the point on ownership, it is critical. If you have clear ownership, you're taking accountability. You've said, look, we've got this wrong, but we're on top of it. This is what we're doing. That goes a long way to reassuring customers that you're in control of it. If you look at some of big disruption, but I remember when Terminal 5 at Heathrow opened, and I think BA had a huge problem with luggage, and they had all sorts of systems. The lack of communication and ownership at that point was well written about in the press, and there've been, I'm sure there's many more examples of different airlines and that kind of thing since. But the common factor is always, when you speak to people, it's, we were left in the dark.
Yeah.
We didn't get the communication. They didn't tell us in time. It didn't feel like anyone owned it. We had to do all the work to find out where our bags were, or where our flights were, or what was happening. So ownership is massive.
Creates anxiety and more uncertainty for the customer. So
It does.
then, they just,
It does. And look, I love people, but we are, as humans, lazy in many ways. We want the path of least resistance. We like things that are easy and simple to deal with. The moment that we put effort back on the customer, that they've got to solve the problem for themselves, the resistance comes in. It's kind of like, why do I have to fill this in?
Sure.
The amount of times you will have sent, and I've had this on with lots of occasions where you'll fill a form out on a website, you'll send them the information, or actually a more classic example is you'll be in a call queue waiting to get through someone's contact centre, and in the call queue it'll say, tell us your name, why have you called, take you through security. Then you get through to the individual, and they do all of that again. And you're like, well, you hang on, I've just done it in the thing. Why are you making me do it again? So that those kind of things just irritate customers.
Yeah, and that's that breakdown in consistency, isn't it? With the sort of systems. And
Yeah.
it actually touches on something I want to briefly cover in this podcast. We could do a whole podcast on it, but AI.
Yes.
So you mentioned today's world and then sort of looking into the future. So how's that going to play, in your opinion, into sort of security and the customer experience with that added element of the robots?
Well, it's already here,
Yeah.
so it's going to play a part. And it's interesting seeing how the market's developed over the last few years. It's still very driven by tech vendors and the inventors and people that have the technology of AI. So all the conversation and the promise is coming from there. And organizations are now starting to think about it and start to deploy it. And you see some really interesting user cases. So it's going to be part of the experience. I think the trap here is that we start to treat AI as something separate and as technology, and it gets led by the CTO and the technical team, when actually it's much more of a business transformation piece that needs to be owned. It can be led by, but it needs to be co-designed by the organization. And so and it's not just AI, any digital transformation. I've been involved in implementing Salesforce and contact center systems and all those kind of different things. But it always works best when it's co-created with people that are involved in different steps of the journey. It tends to be worse when it's just led by technology people.
Sure.
That's not because technology people are bad or they have a bad intent, by the way. It's just because the organization's gone to the CTO, you lead this and you put it in, when actually it should be more that. So it's here to stay. It will form more and more and part of what we do. But I think AI is much more about enablement and facilitating people to be better at their jobs than it is about replacing them. Look, no doubt there are going to be some jobs that are replaced. I used to run a department years and years ago where there was somebody who sat in the office and their job was taking stapled checks off letters and creating a pile of checks to go and be banked.
Right.
Now, that job doesn't exist anymore. It didn't take AI to get it away. It took electronic banking to get rid of it, right? Yeah. So you have these evolutions of some of those jobs that we have in organisations that are there because of poor systems, poor practice. They're there to cover up the cracks. And as we get better with technology and systems, those jobs will inevitably be less needed and will eventually go. So there will be some displacement, but I think for the most part, AI is a really powerful enabler to enable people to do their jobs better, quicker, improve productivity. But also on the other side, I see the real opportunity around data insights. So AI being able to help us to understand data at scale and at speed at a way in which we've not been able to do before, and able to handle large amounts of information at speed. So humans aren't looking at rows on a spreadsheet or reams and reams of data, but it can able to do that. So definitely will be form part of the experience. The key is how well it's designed in.
Absolutely. And from a security perspective, it's the same core security principles as there always have been.
Yeah.
It's, let's look at what data we're inputting, where is it going, who's holding it, and ultimately, are we happy with that being out on the internet?
Yeah, and look, the other part of the coin is that if we don't do it, if organisations like you and others don't do it themselves, then other people take matters into their hands. So if you look at how Apple are developing security on their devices, you look at Apple Sign On now and the way it doesn't share the email address with organisations, being able to lock down your device. So actually, it's now starting to come out of the hands necessarily of organisations and what they put together to actually, it's now easier for me to sign in with an Apple Sign On than it is to go through your form and fill in my name, my email address, and all of these things. I just press one button and I do it. Now, what that does to you is it takes away your ability to see my data. I'm now back in control of my data. Yeah. And so if companies don't get wise to this and make it easy for customers to do things, then I think you have just other people come in and eat your lunch. They'll come in and do those things. Apple will continue to do these things. Reduce the amount of tracking on websites, or take the ability for you to do that and make content disappear on websites, so the advertising becomes less intrusive and things, because they've seen this is about making it easy for customers.
Yeah.
And I think you have to engineer that in to your solution.
Absolutely. Security shouldn't be a barrier to business as usual.
No.
It should be, as we've been
Yeah,
discussing, part of the whole organisation's thought process, embedded into everything, and then it doesn't become a challenge.
Yeah,
It's great customer experience.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. I think you know really nicely articulated. It shouldn't be something separate. It's just part of what you do in your everyday stuff, and something that people think about constantly as part of whatever it is they're designing.
Fantastic. And I've got one final question, Vinay, that I often like to ask our guests. So what's next for you?
Oh, for me, so I've got a couple of clients that I'm doing some work with. So I'm working with a company at the moment that's going through huge acquisition. So I'm helping them design consistent experience across these different companies. I've got a few speaking engagements that are coming up where I'm talking to audiences all about the power of customer experience and the fact that the product of customer experience is memory. I have a few family things that are coming up as well in the calendar, which is nice as well. We're actually in sort of final GCSE year here at home as well now. My daughter's 15 and she's taking her exam, so we're kind of a bit wrapped up in that as well. So yeah, lots of things going on, lots of plates spinning, but never a dull moment.
Sounds good. Sounds like you're not that busy then, by all accounts. Thank you so much for today, Vinay. I think it's been a fascinating conversation about security, cyber security, and how that feeds into the customer experience.
Yeah, definitely. The digital world is here. We're not going to step away from it, and it will keep evolving. And so, but the name of the game is trust, as we keep coming back to, and cybersecurity is a big part of that delivery.
Lovely.
Right.
So, thank you very much for listening, everyone. Please, those usual things, like, share and subscribe. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to our cybersecurity podcast. If you're keen to learn more, please visit our website, www.aristi.co.uk. Cybersecurity made simple.